start again then. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to be back with our first startup morning of the year. We've been running these for around 3.5 years now, and we love doing these. We love sort of interacting with the wider startup community and running these events. So before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk and Bindjarra Noongar people, pay our respects to their dynamic culture and leaders past, present and emerging. So my name's Mel Malloy. I'm part of the team at Launchpad. We've also got Genevieve here, Jeremy, part of the team. So we have a great team, all passionate about supporting students, about building community around startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, helping students develop skills for their future careers. So that's what we're about, and I think that's about it really. I'm just going to pass over to Jeremy Chetty, who is our awesome entrepreneur in residence, and Jeremy will introduce our speakers today and get going.
Thanks, Mel, and for the kind words, as always. Yeah, welcome everybody and good morning. Good to see some familiar faces on the call, and people, I guess, that are in our startup community that really are supporters and encouragers. And it's so good to see you all making time, an hour out of your day, to support our two founders this morning. So really appreciate your time. Look, welcome to our startup morning for semester one. We used to do this monthly, but now we're just doing it one a semester. But really just to give you a quick overview of what we do. Before I do that, for those that don't know me on the call, my name is Jeremy Chetty. I'm the co-founder of Student Edge, former Murdoch business student and entrepreneur in residence at the university, here to support Launchpad, our innovation space, and work very closely with Jen and Mel in terms of helping our next generation of entrepreneurs. So, but this format for this morning is really cool, where we give 6 minutes to each founder to basically pitch the idea. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So if you've got any questions, either wait for it when the presenter has finished or pop them in the chat. I'll be facilitating, so I can actually throw to you as well. If you've got a question, just put your hand up on the Zoom, and Mel or Jen will tell me that you've got a question and I'll throw to you. But really, it's about 6 minutes presenting from the founder, and then about 15 minutes of Q&A. And you can ask any question you want for the founder. The whole point of this forum is really to support and encourage and give feedback to both our founders this morning. That's the whole purpose of our startup morning. And everything's in confidence as well. So Chatham House rules, just for those that are wondering. So yeah, so feel free to be as open, as honest as you can, even with your questions, and to our presenters will do the same. So yeah, why don't we get started and dive into it? Two presenters today who I've known over the last few months, and then in Francois's case, a few years. Both have, I believe, got great startup ideas and businesses. And we're going to get Ella from Employii to kick things off. Ella, I'd like to welcome you to Startup Morning with Murdoch and Launchpad. You've got 6 minutes. The floor is yours. Maybe Mel or Jen will keep timer, but yeah, 6 minutes, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Share my screen. You could let me know if it's working. That would be fantastic.
Working.
Right. Put my little timer on. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Ella, and I'm an industrial relations and human resources specialist. And I'm also the founder of Employii, which is a Perth-based HR consultancy that services clients, which is both employers and employees, Australia-wide. Now, I've been told by other HR people more than once, you know, you've got to pick a side. You can't possibly support both employees and employers. But to me, that's exactly what's wrong with the current model of HR consulting. To me, it's HR's role to strengthen the employee-employer relationship, and it's not to pin them against each other. Especially in today's context, we've got staff shortages. So if raising workplace issues means the end of an employment relationship, honestly, what are we doing in HR? With this approach in mind, and before I get to the main pitch and the main ask, I really want to talk about our why, and it's a little bit of a personal story. Is that slide? So this could be your daughter, it could be your student, your sister, or in my case, it was one of my best friends. Graduating uni and working in HR, I quickly became the HR friend. People would come to me with their work questions and concerns, and one night one of my best friends kind of came to me really hesitantly, and I could tell something wasn't quite right. Something was wrong. Long story short, it turned out that she was being sexually harassed at work for months now. When we talked through some of these issues, and yes, these are all direct quotes, she started saying things like, I thought this happened to everyone. I'm just a grad, what am I going to do? And if I do something, I'm just going to get fired. Helping her with this issue, I could see firsthand the impact this had on her mental health. Speaking with more students, I quickly realised 4 things. Everyone's got an HR story. People do not understand their work rights. Young people are vulnerable, and international students even more so. On the last one, again, these are direct quotes. I wish they weren't, but just to give you a bit of context around what some of our international students are experiencing. So fast forward, an Employii was born. And yes, we do have employer services mentioned, and we typically work with small to medium businesses for that, for anything from ad hoc tasks to being the outsourced HR department. However, what I'm here to pitch and talk to you today is actually one of our initiatives that's gaining traction in the community, which we've entitled Respect Us Too. This campaign is a multi-stakeholder approach that seeks to increase community awareness, develop student graduate HR-based knowledge, and provide accessible HR support to directly address work-related issues that students and grads face. By normalising basic HR literacy and the habit of standing up for your workplace rights, we can create a culture of shared accountability, constructive conflict, and ultimately better outcomes for businesses, individuals, and society combined. So how are we actually going to do this? We've based our activities off the recommendations made by the Respect at Work inquiry, which look to address sexual harassment in the workplace. And we support these recommendations and believe they can be applied equally for the matter of underpayments and other workplace issues as well. So we'll focus on points 1 and 3 because the second one really applies to employers. But on the employee side, we want to do HR 101 workshops and introduce people to their work rights in Australia. And we've also really taken on TikTok and social media to provide free HR tips and be that point of call when people just don't know what's quite happening at work, but feel like they can't go to their HR department either. The third part is all about that better support, advice, and advocacy who experience these workplace issues. So that's through direct HR support. We would love a combined model, but that is the in-person HR hot desk because you can really build that trust. But obviously in today's world, virtual support is necessary as well. So what's our ask from you and what are we really looking for? We want to spread this on a broader scale. So we're looking for sponsorship, partnerships, and just general awareness if financial commitment is not something you can make right now. Our HR workshops cost us $180 per workshop. And while we've done a number for free, we're currently pushing to, I suppose, you know, it is a business at the end of the day. We do need to be supported financially for these. In addition, we've got TikTok, which is great, gaining traction, and we've had 100% growth in followers, almost 1 million views, and 200,000 likes just in a few months. Sorry, the 100% growth is since January this year. So we're looking to commercialise that so then we can reallocate those funds into providing staff for our workshops and the direct HR support. So again, it just gets fed straight back into our initiatives. And lastly, we've got the direct HR support, where if a student is experiencing an issue, they can get our help and we can support them and you know, attend workplace meetings or respond to HR letters, investigations, that kind of thing, as well as the hot desk and the virtual support. And that is a significantly reduced rate as it is. So that's kind of our contribution. Our commercial rates are $180 an hour. But for students, again, this is a cause we care about. So we do want to make sure it's affordable and accessible, but we still need some support in that area. So in terms of the market, these are some numbers that I pulled in terms of how many students that we have in WA alone. It is something that can be applied nationally. But as you can see, there's lots of students and there's lots of international people that we have an opportunity to help and make sure they are supported to have really strong and psychologically safe careers in Australia. And that's it.
Thanks very much, Ella. I might just get you to stop sharing screen and we'll bring up the lobby. And under 6 minutes. Well, well done. Well done. So I think we've got a few questions going. Jen, you had your question. I might kick it off. And I can't see the chat yet, but I might kick it off with the first question. Well done, by the way. That's great. And it's a real problem you're trying to solve in the community. I think obviously my eyes went to that statement of, I think one of them was, you're not white or something.
Yes.
This is all real stuff that's happening out there in the market. But anyway, question. So I know you gave us an update on the marketing traction around your posts and the response to posts and likes and so forth, but what's been the customer attraction? So what's been the feedback from students that you've worked with, and how many student customers have you got? Give us an idea of what traction you've got to date around the customer.
Yeah, so in terms of the customer, if we're looking at paid customers, we've got 35 paid individuals who've come and sought assistance for anything from underpayments, contracts, CV help. In terms of university, we do have one university on board who's also paid for 76 hours worth of support for their international students through funding from another grant that they received. And now we're starting to get more workshops, interest from universities and also student guild groups. So looking at a number of workshops at Murdoch, also looking at the Student Guild in UWA and Curtin as well, both their HR student association and their guilds there as well. So it's starting to get some traction in terms of the paid work. The free work, obviously, that's a different story. We have webinars and we'll have about 20 to 30 people per webinar. And all the universities, sorry, not all the universities, we've had support from UWA, Curtin and Murdoch in sharing those webinars to their students as well.
Yeah, okay, cool, thanks. And that kind of segues into a question that Mel actually had, and she's popped in the chat around, are you looking to partner with universities and what would this look like?
Yeah, we definitely are. So in the ideal world, it would be a combination of the paid, the workshops and also the direct HR support, because for me, the direct HR support is what's really lacking. But one of the hurdles for students is they don't know where to go. They think they're going to get fired if they access it. And, they're not going to want to spend a lot of money on it either, because it's just not in the realm of where they want to spend their money. And I was the exact same when I was at uni. But the impact on their mental health is huge. The impact on their career aspirations is huge. So from a university perspective, it's actually setting up students for really strong, healthy careers. And I think it's creating a collective culture where we're all accountable for having a safe and healthy workplace. So the workshops and the direct HR support is my goal with universities. But at the moment, it's creating that awareness. So sharing the events, letting people know the services out there. That's our kind of stepping stone, which is free.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that. Jack's actually joined the call, and Jack is, I think you saw the growth and marketing lead at Ammo Marketing, and he's put a question in the chat. Jack, I might get you to ask this because this is obviously your space. Jack's question's around explaining the TikTok post. So Jack, do you want to ask that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
So yeah, my question was around the TikTok posts. Are you getting paid to do those posts $100 an hour, or are you paying someone to guest post, like a HR professional or something, to guest post on your profile? Or
yeah, so with TikTok, that's all just me in my spare time, what an HR director does when she clocks off for the day. Yeah. So what the idea there is that if we can commercialize those, so for example, have a sponsored post, then we can actually use that funds and use that money to then sponsor the workshops and the direct HR support. So it's reallocating those funds to the service. So I'm more than happy to make TikToks on my own time. I don't mind it. I'm not looking to be paid for that. What I'm looking for is, let's use this as an opportunity to funnel funds into the other services that are really going to benefit students directly. But the TikTok's been going really well. I've had heaps of feedback from people on there, like students saying it's my first job. I wouldn't have known what to do in this situation, or I wish I found you sooner, and it's been really positively received. So
yeah, for sure. Like short, sharp HR advice on TikTok. I mean, I don't know many people are doing that. So
yeah.
if you could carve out that niche, I think you'll find some success in other areas probably as well. So nice.
Good question. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, and I was going to say, Ella, just to follow on from that, I suppose from a student edge point of view, that's where students are learning. Like obviously YouTube, TikTok's like the new YouTube, right? So our research is showing that that's where young people are going for that key advice. So the fact that you'd be able to get such good traction from that platform, and like you said, if you be able to follow through with the monetization point of it, then that's a no-brainer. Worst case scenario is building your brand anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Well, we'll keep motoring on. Matthew, I might get you to ask this question. Matthew makes a really good point, and it kind of segues into what you were saying before, Ella, about utilizing that revenue to be able to sponsor these workshops, because affordability, especially for students, they just can't afford this type of advice. So Matthew's question, I'll get you to ask it, Matthew, because that is...
Well, you're pointing out about $13 an hour at 100. Somebody might be being paid, they're being underpaid at $180 an hour. They have to work 2 full days to buy an hour of time. It's highly unlikely that somebody would do that. They would ultimately just leave, move on. The next victim walks in, and off we go.
I think that's a good question, because I think it actually highlights a miscommunication on my part. So the $13 an hour is actually an underpayment. So for this particular employee, they should have been paid $21 an hour. So that's why that was a problem.
Sorry, that's the client group that you're actually after, is those who have got that sort of problem. So they're being paid $13 an hour to get this additional money. They would have to invest an enormous amount where they're probably living on the breadline themselves in order to be able to afford to get restitution. This, it's equal justice is not a thing. So that's what I say. It's just a challenge which I can see to any business model if your client group ultimately cannot pay.
Yeah, so with that, for the individual employee, the rates are $85 an hour or cheaper if you buy in a set, and that's why we're really looking to partner with the universities. So, for example, in that case, the university was the customer, and they purchased $4,000 worth of service for their international students to consume. So there's no cost on their part for the student. Where obviously it's an issue if the student doesn't have that affordability, they do have to make the decision, am I going to pay $85 an hour to pursue this issue? And sometimes they won't do that, and that's the biggest barrier that we've got. But we do have the free, that's where the free kind of social media and free online workshops. We do a free version of the HR 101 workshop where we give out that general advice just to give people some pointers. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. We have a situation where we've got people who can't afford expert advice who are being taken advantage of. So that's the problem that I'm trying to solve. And the biggest barrier, as you pointed out, is they don't have the money to spend. So for me, universities have been a great source. Obviously, parents can be another customer, but not everyone's in the position where their parents can afford it either. So the universities and schools are my main target. As well, if I can get some money from TikTok, then I can offer those services prepaid via my good old TikTok. So yeah, you've hit the nail on the head with the biggest struggle with this.
Yeah, and the concept of government, approaching government because there's a social service aspect of this.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've been learning all about grants lately, so any tips, welcome.
And it's a good point everyone's raising around it. There might be something in your B2B model, Ella, where you're getting these corporates and employers and unis and stuff to pay those bulk packages for the students, which kind of segues into a question. Alicia, I might get you to ask this question about that you've raised in the chat around the employer.
Hi everyone, great presentation and really well communicated, well done. I just wondered whether there's a possible employer facing service that you could provide Because I guess where I stand, you know, this is actually the job of the HR department to support their employees, and whether they do that or not effectively is another thing. So I'm just wondering, is the problem, and not to reiterate that it's always like that victim blame kind of model where, you know, it's actually you have to defend yourself. It's rather that, you know, to be proactive. Maybe the opportunity is actually for you to pivot round to the employer side and say, hey, I've got all the tools you need to actually reach your audience more effectively, because I think it's all there. It's just a different way of approaching it.
Yeah, definitely.
Money.
Yeah, employers definitely have a lot more money to spend. And so that's where the dual model service comes from. So I haven't focused on it today, but we have most of my revenue comes from the employer. So we do offer those services. I think there's definitely more in what you're saying here, and it's something that we can look at in terms of providing them with basically all you need to, as you said, all you need to look after your staff in this demographic and create that awareness. For me, and happy to get feedback, is again, one of the things I have is that I work with employers that get it. They love their staff. They want to do the right thing. They might not know how, but that's what we're here for. And we work with a lot of people that don't have internal HR. So we have that ability to really make a difference. Again, one of the barriers that I'm trying to look at how we can overcome is when you've got a boss who just frankly doesn't care. And that's where we find it. Employees in those situations are probably the ones that need the help the most, but they're also the ones that I have the toughest time talking to employers about. But I think there's a lot more to it in that space. So yeah, the integrated approach is, I think it's going to be critical to making any long-term change. But I've copied and pasted your comments, so I'm going to take that with me.
Yeah, and what I'm saying also, and thank you, but also, you know, if you are going to have those conversations about approaching it from a shared values perspective, so that, you know, you did say there, you know, that you want to have those conversations, but approaching it from, you know, that position of a shared value moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that question. Guys, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm just going to, in the chat, maybe just throw to the last two, just James and Steve. Steve, you put two in the chat. Maybe the last one's probably relevant. So I'll let James go first. James, if you want to ask your question, and then we'll finish off with you, Steve, and then we'll round it out.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Ella. Great presentation. Just very quickly from, I suppose, my experience, we put together for my platform a number of different packages, pitching to corporate, pitching to universities, and we always struggled. The smaller we went, the more granular for sort of individual posts, individual workshops, and we did quite well when we packaged it together as sort of a $3 or $5 grand engagement where they could try us over a period of time. It was a bit bigger, but it was also something that they were more used to doing, and it was easier for them to commit to a larger chunk of money than a smaller one. So targeting corporates, I think that's something to keep in mind. Last year, we had an experience with a couple of the accountants that we were connected to where they were incredibly hungry to get in front of an audience, especially in tertiary education, and Jeremy will know all about it, just to try and get some interest for new grads, especially with the current climate. I think there's a lot more value there at the moment. So definitely worth exploring. But yeah, great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great feedback. I've never done anything in this kind of space in terms of pitching to corporates. So that's really useful information.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And awesome question. Steve, we'll finish off with you, mate. Yep. Thanks for joining as well.
Okay, thank you. Everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I may have missed some of this, but that last point, my chat was to do with, yes, the employers are an important market if you can get to them. And I do understand, I've worked for the, like CFO kind of background. The larger employers, I mean, they have to have something to help their people, and typically there'll be mental health services they outsource. If you've got a problem, ring this number, it's all kept secret, all those sorts of things. It really is a question of who are the main students, who are they working for? Where are they having these problems? I can imagine cafes or something. So have you really nailed who your student market is, and if so, you may then be able to sort of unpeel that or seek assistance if it is a group that represents cafes or the hotel and industry type people may say, that's really good. We know, you know, our pubs aren't very good at it. We know there are people working behind the bar who have problems. We may stick ourselves in the middle here to assist you. And I think the more of those conversations you have, the better. And happy separately to have a chat with you if there are some other points that come up from the PowerPoint. But I appreciate what you're doing, because I've got a year 12 and I've got a year 8. And one of them works at a gelato shop, and things are really good there. But my earlier point was, can you get a bit of education into them in year 11 and 12 as well? And the schools actually may be more interested in that. They're trying to, well, Perth College is where my girls go. They're trying to bring in some kind of financial awareness or what happens in the real world afterwards type units. You know, a half an hour of this a week to try and teach them something. Their rights when they're working would be a real no-brainer of something that will interest them. It may give them more confidence to go and get a job. You know, it's just a good service. And I think what you're aiming to do, from what I've briefly seen, is excellent. So keep in touch. Happy to keep chatting. I'm just interested in people making successful startups. So. And I've known this guy, Jeremy, for too long.
Great
so
point.
well done. Well done.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I would definitely take you up on that offer if that's okay afterwards.
Awesome. Awesome. Guys, in the essence of time, and Alicia, thanks very much for making that comment in the chat. You're in the education space, and yes, there's a lot of work going on there, especially now that consent and stuff is mandated into schools next year. There's a flow-on effect that could go into rights at work as well, right? It's all part of the same broader issues. But anyway, thanks very much, Ellen. Closing out your presentation. Well done. And like I said, you've already got some connections here and some people that want to stay in touch. So Mel and Jen will set you up in terms of connecting you with the relevant audience members. It's 10:02. I'm going to throw to our next co-founder, Francois Grobler from SmorTech. Francois, thanks for joining, and we look forward to hearing your presentation. You have 6 minutes.
Do I have 6 or 4?
6.
Okay. I'll try and stick to that as much as possible, but I might go slightly over. Okay, so our company's name is SmorTech, which is short for smog removal technology. And our belief is that everyone in the world deserves to breathe fresh air. And therefore our purpose and our mission is to develop technology that cleans polluted air and that therefore improves people's lives. So unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that there's a pollution problem. But sometimes it's sobering to actually consider, you know, just the statistics behind it. And the World Health Organization does a lot of research and put together these statistics that's quite stelling. According to them, 99% of people in the world actually live in areas that exceed World Health Organization limits in terms of pollution, air pollution. And this affects about 7 billion people on the globe adversely. There's about 7 million deaths every single year due to air pollution. And this amounts to about $28 billion in health costs. So those are costs related to medical bills, hospitalization, etc. And then if you add that together to the total economic cost globally, then it actually adds up to an astounding $4.6 trillion per annum. So that would be due to off time, sick leave, etc. So it's quite amazing statistics. And we are clearly not winning in this race. So our product is what we call the Smog Eater. And it's essentially, we put together this prototype that was done specifically for testing initially. It's a vertical stack that's consists of 4 modules, around 1 meter cubes that's stacked on top of each other. We suck in dirty air in the bottom and let it out the top. And in the middle, there's a wet scrubber system consisting of pipes and spray nozzles. There's an extraction fan on top, and then there's a reservoir on the side for the recycling fluid. So we recycle the fluid through the system. And for the testing, we had our own pollution generation section on the side where the little man stands. And then we've got sensors at the inlet and the outlet. And the idea for the testing was to detect the sensor readings for certain gases and polluting matter at the inlet and the outlet, and to see if we are effective in removing the pollutants through the system. So we believe our system is really simple. The componentry is really simple, basic, easy to access, easy to construct. We believe it's quite flexible. It can be scaled easily, bigger, smaller. It's modular, so it can easily be assembled and disassembled. It's got a great coverage, so it covers particulate matter, so pollutants, that's fine particles, but it also covers gases. We are currently looking into potentially covering things like airborne bacteria and viruses as well. So there's an interesting area that we want to research. It's affordable as well because it's very basic. It will really be affordable to construct and to maintain. So just looking at the market opportunity, looking back at that figure we saw earlier, we see the total available market of $4.6 trillion per annum as the TAM. If we just get 1% of that as a serviceable available market that our products are suited for, and if we can get 1% yet of the SAM, then our target market is still an astounding $500 million, and that's what we see as our opportunity. So we started in early 2020. I remember having conversations with Jeremy in 2018 already. I started this business with Gordon Webster, and very soon realized that we needed to get some technical expertise. So we got 2 mechanical engineers on the team, Naren and David. During the first year, we did computational fluid dynamic modeling. So in a simulated environment, we modeled the dynamics of a system like this to test whether it works. We got great results in the first year. We also got chemical engineer Dennis Angove to join us as an associate at that stage. So the year after that, we decided we've got enough to actually, the next step would be to build a testing prototype. So we designed, constructed, and then started testing the prototype in the end of last year. We got fantastic results. So another big tick for us. And so that's brought us to the current. I can mention as well that during that time last year, we also added another person to our team. It's a electronics engineer who helped us with all the sensors and all that. And recently, in the beginning of this year, we got joined by Steve, who's in the audience. And that brought us to now. So the next step for us is to build a number of prototypes that we can actually use in the field. The first one is a prototype we want to focus on. It's a small little device that we can use for testing and monitoring. It's got sensors inside. So the idea is to place it at a prospective user's location and start recording data. And it'll be wirelessly capturing data, and we'll be able to monitor that and do data analytics on it. And it'll be a great starting point for a conversation to then focus on some of our actual larger prototypes. So this one is similar to the testing prototype. It's vertical, but it could also be horizontal. It'll be for external use. It will work well in a network. So you'll build it in a suburb or so. So it's externally exposed to the atmosphere. And then we have 2 smaller units that will be mobile, so it'll be on wheels. The one would be a little bit more robust that we can use in an industrial setting in areas like building sites or workshops. It can function internal or external. And then the other smaller unit is really for internal use. So in buildings, in rooms, in school classrooms, in dwellings, etc. And it'll also it'll assist with people with health problems because it'll be cleaning the air for the health compromise. So those are the next prototypes we would like to build. Our go-to-market strategy, there's still many gaps in it, but essentially we want to produce these air pollution removal devices or facilities and associated services because we think it's, as I mentioned before, simple, scalable, flexible, affordable, and all that good stuff. We want to offer that. There's such a multitude of potential users, all the way from shires, municipalities, hospitals, schools, workshop, factories, household, scaling from large to small. There's really a massive opportunity. Where we want to focus initially in Australia, local in Perth, get some of these prototypes designed and set up and start recording data and demonstrating the capabilities, but then going beyond that to the rest of the world, probably focusing on highly polluted areas like Delhi and Beijing, etc., but ultimately, going globally. And then in terms of how we will start using local and global networks, building our own networks, speaking to the right people, using social media, speaking to environmental agencies, speaking to the EPA to ask them what's the legislation around all this. And it'll be important to establish partnerships, because if we want to do business in countries like India and China, we will need those partnerships to facilitate things. So up to now, we've been doing everything self-funded. We've been bootstrapped, so time, effort, and cash amounting to about 250K up to now. But now we actually need to get some funding, because there's some important next steps. We need to optimize and finalize the prototype design. We need to explore further prototypes, look at more use cases. We need to do a proper competitor analysis. We did some basic competitor analysis. There doesn't seem to be too many alternatives out there, and the competition is not massive, but we haven't done a comprehensive search around that. We need to do proper financial projection. We need to start raising awareness and gain some more traction, starting a lot of conversations. We need some more research. There's still a lot of gaps that we need to research, dealing with universities and others, academic parties. And then we need to start engaging with potential users so that we can get an understanding of the value proposition, because we have an idea of what it costs to produce, but in terms of deciding on what the price points would be, we need to get feedback from potential users. So just quickly looking at the team, is myself and Gordon, who started the business, and Steve, who's recently joined. He's an accountant. So from the business side, we've got the three of us, and then we've got three technical experts. Naren and Dave are both mechanical engineers, and Tom is an electronics engineer. All of them a lot of years of experience, and many of these guys, in fact, all of them have their own businesses, so all of them have had exposure to startups. And we have an associate, as I mentioned, Dennis Angove, who's a chemical engineer. So our ask is for 500K capital injection to kickstart the process and to enable us to do the range of activities I've mentioned previously over the next 18 months. And there's a bit of a breakup of the use of the funds, the way we see it. That is it.
Great stuff. Thanks.
I don't know if that was 6 minutes or not, just out of interest. How long was that?
That was closer to 10, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. I think you were just on fire. The passion was running through your veins, mate. I wasn't going to stop you. We still got a little bit of time. So well done, mate. I didn't realize, man, what a big problem you're trying to solve.
Yes.
I didn't realize it's 99% of the world. Is that correct?
Basically, the whole world is in trouble.
Wow. And I noticed you didn't go anywhere near climate change and stuff. You just stuck to, this is the problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
You want to make it a political statement and so forth. But yeah, well done, mate. That's great. And the 7 million debts, it sounds like a bit of a silent
and that was a few years ago. So yeah, it is a silent killer. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, still more than COVID debts, but this seems to be a silent killer happening right now. But anyway, mate, I'll dive into the questions because they're coming through now. Mate, my question is more around, because I've kind of known your journey. A lot of work has gone into it. What has been the actual feedback from the market? So when you say you're going to do this prototype, you've always been developing the prototype in consultation with the market or potential customers. Has there been any sort of feedback from, anyone in India, or you mentioned Beijing or Perth, WA? Give us an idea of what the traction's been around the customer.
Yeah, we started some local conversations. I had a conversation with a guy at a workshop in Welshpool where we actually hosted the prototype, and it seems like people don't actually know if they how bad their pollution problem is. And so I think having that prototype, small prototype that we want to use for the testing the air pollution would be a really good demonstration of how bad the problem is. But a lot of people show interest, but you don't get the feeling that they necessarily want to commit to buying one of these yet. But they're keen to host it, and I think hosting it would actually demonstrate that it is beneficial to them. But we've only just really started the journey of speaking to people, so it's fairly early days. I'm planning to approach the likes of schools and hospitals, and just assess the potential demand or the need.
Okay, cool. Which kind of segues. Jack's also asked a question. Do you have any pre-orders at the moment, and who are you applied with for the initial unit in Perth?
No, we don't have pre-orders yet. We have expressions of interest. So the guy that I spoke to at the workshop indicated that they'll be happy to host one of our facilities, one of the mobile ones. And so yeah, early days for that.
In terms of if someone had to order one though, what would be the cost, like for maybe the smaller unit up to the bigger units? Give us a range.
So our calculations, very, very broad, high-level calculations, is that for the bigger unit, it'll be in the order of about 30 to 50K. So that'll be literally like a 3 or 4 meter stack thing that you would construct, which would have a foundation, and it'll be a combination of steel and plastic. I'm thinking of using this high-density polyethylene black plastic as an inner. And for the smaller units, we are thinking around about the 10K to 20K market.
Okay. That sounds a bit cheap to me, Francois.
Oh, that's a good answer. I like that. Too cheap. Fantastic. Yeah. You see, that's why the reason we need to get to these people and ask them what the value proposition equates to for them, so we can sound them in terms of what's too expensive or what's too cheap. Because the only thing that I can equate to this to is if I buy a mobile air conditioner, that I put in my house, how much does that cost? Well, that's probably 2,000 or 5,000, whatever. So there's not too many things that I can compare this with, really. Yeah, but that's good feedback. I was glad it's not the opposite.
Let's keep motoring. James, did you want to ask your question around the prototype?
Yeah, it kind of started getting answered anyway, really, regarding where the focus is. Just for the initial unit you were talking about, that 3 meter high unit, is that still sort of functional anywhere? Are you looking to place that? Is it mainly industrial on top of buildings?
Well, that unit was a testing unit, and we actually built that from plywood, and we assembled it in a workshop in Wellspool. So that wouldn't really have an application out in the atmosphere. And that one was actually closer to 5 meters high, but it was really just for testing. But for the next iteration of the vertical prototype, it'll probably be a little bit shorter. But we have changed the design so to have a manifold structure rather than a single linear flow section in the middle.
Just on that, I guess to answer your question, that would suit a workshop, a larger.
Not really. No, the workshop is what we aim for. That is a smaller one that you can wheel around, and you can position it close to the source of pollution. So literally the testing prototype was just to test whether this works, and yeah, we've ticked that box. That one is now disassembled at the workshop where we hosted it, and we've been told we need to move it soon. So yeah, it has a limited shelf life.
I think the question leading really was into the aesthetics of it. It very much looks like an industrial unit, and if you're looking at rural, you're looking at schools, you're looking at other areas like that. Sure. And then following into the next step about trying to raise capital, I'm going through the process of looking at possible crowdfunding with virtual organization Virtual. I think they're pretty big in WA at the moment, and I've seen tech that doesn't have the social impact of yours. I've seen tech that isn't anywhere near as finished as yours, raising close to $1 million just off some images that look quite glossy and look more like sort of finished almost like Apple iPhone wind farm sort of images. So that really sexy aesthetic, I think, would help with raising capital. Just from
Yeah, no, definitely. I didn't mention, but for the smaller, especially the unit that will be used inside and in hospital and schools, we definitely will work on the aesthetics of that. So that's a more appealing, and it will be quieter. It won't be noisy. But one that works in a workshop or out on a building site, you can get away with a little bit more, less appealing but more functional. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is a really a good point. That and an attraction for me is you've built your MVP. It's there, it's working. It's so much further down the track than some of these things that we're seeing through virtual or Equitize or other. So that is a strong point, and it is well done that you've done that before you go to these next steps.
Thanks. Great point. We'll keep moving on. Jen's asked, what motivated you to start building this, Francois? And how does the system differ?
I knew you were going to ask that. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to think what was whether the penny dropped for me. And I really think that it happened about 8 years ago when I was on a consulting trip to Beijing. And I very excitedly arrived in the first time in this big city that, I was very excited to see what the lay of the land, but it was midnight, went to bed, woke up next morning, very excited to throw up the curtains on my, 25-story apartment, and dumbstruck. I could only see about 5 meters out of the window. And it was amazing feeling of being, suspended in jelly or something, and claustrophobia. And at that moment, I decided, I just had this realization: what must it be like to live in a city like that? And then a few things pennies started dropping for me, because I was thinking, hang on, when it rains in Beijing, then the skies are clean. And then people complain about acid rain. So I started putting these things together. So, the water must be capturing the pollution, and pollution must end up, dissolving in the water. And many of these things started sort of building up momentum. And in 2019, I just decided better get serious about this. So, yeah.
Awesome. And she had a follow on. How does it differ from a Dyson air purifier?
Well, I'm not exactly sure how Dyson works, but I know that we do compete with HVAC, applications, and using some of these advanced HEPA filters. But most of those are actually what they call dry scrubbers. It doesn't use water, and many of those devices are very expensive to run because they use these expensive, high efficiency particle. I'm not sure what HEPA stands for, but it's expensive, and it's you have to replace those filters. And we actually within our technology have recycling of the filtering material, and so there's a bit of a sustainability aspect there as well. But we will probably compete with the likes of Dyson on our small devices. Just make ours look better. It's all about aesthetics.
Well,
it sounds like. Yeah. I was just going to say, it sounds like your technology is more scalable. Like you can, get more pollution more efficiently.
You can get more pollution, but you can also scale it physically. So you can make it small, or, you can make it as big or small as you want, and it'll cover more pollutants. Because the thing with Dyson and some of these other air conditioning units, they don't capture gases. In our facility, we can capture gases that dissolve in water. So we can go for things like NOx and SOx and CO2 and CO and anything that dissolves in water, including potentially viruses and bacteria. And, if we add ultraviolet light to that, then it can really have a big impact.
So, Francois, just flicking back to you, you look like you're in Beijing and you've got
I'm going to take hostages.
You're sitting with smog in the background there. Is that all part of the?
No, my office just looks way too academical, so I needed to just look a little bit cooler. So there we go. That's why I wear a black shirt like Jeremy.
And speaking about your product, James has already set the bar high, mate. It's got to look like the iPhone and that type of design, mate. So.
You can put posters of Mickey Mouse on your device if you want. You can, sky's the limit. You can put a clock on it.
Mate, I'm going to keep moving on. Alessia's raised a really good point about, I guess, where SmorTech plays is in the dealing with the symptom. of the problem. The point was, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to do anything in the actual cause of the problem area? Because obviously, you know, if we can work on the cause, then the symptom is.
Yeah,
you know,
and I actually get that I've had that question raised before, that this actually takes the onus away on the polluters because they know there's a way out. But guess what? The polluters are not winning. They're not winning in the race to actually reduce their effluent and you know, getting to their limits. So this is a hybrid solution. This doesn't replace the you know, the burden on the polluter. But, you know, another point to make is that the closer you can actually put this device to the pollution generation location, the more efficient it'll be, because as soon as pollution dissipates, then you actually need it to be reconcentrated before you have another stab at it. And that's why for cities like Beijing and Santiago and Los Angeles, it's where the pollution is reconcentrated, because there's a geographic trap zone where you have another chance at capturing it. But yeah, I've heard that statement being made. There was a lady that was very vocal in India who said, when I mentioned this to her, she said, yeah, but now, you know, the polluters are going to feel like they don't have to solve their problem anymore. Yeah, I don't know. It's responsibility. Everybody takes their own responsibility. Yeah.
No, great question. Thanks, Alicia. Brittany's actually got a question in here. Brittany, I don't know if you want to ask that.
Hello, sorry, I'm actually sitting in bed with my bung knee. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Brittany.
So my question was just related to the waste aspect of your product. So you were saying it uses a water as opposed to like the Dyson, which uses air. Yep. You were mentioning that within a hospital, you were looking at putting a product into a hospital setting. I work within a hospital and there's lots of protocols in terms of cleaning. So have you considered that clinical waste factor with your product?
Yeah, I mean, the bacteria and virus idea came to me like yesterday, so I still have to think through all that. But I can actually mention that part and parcel of this system. So it's not just the water. The water end up in a reservoir, and before it gets into that, it goes through a biomass filter. So using biomass like hemp or something like that, that traps the particulate matter, and then there's another agent within the reservoir that neutralizes. We think that this solution is going to be mildly acidic, so we're using limestone, etc., to neutralize that. But then the water circulates back. But definitely, that's why I mentioned the ultraviolet light, because I know that would kill the bacteria and the viruses. But then certainly you'll end up with something that you have to dispose of, and that's definitely a really good point you make. How to dispose of that?
Yeah.
But the thing is, better have it in a disposable, you know, material rather than floating in the air, because nobody's got control of it. So
just on that, I mean, that's part of the kind of industrial design and solution to fit the market, you know, the particular circumstance. So, you know, for example, I'm thinking aloud, really, these closed capture of, you know, the waste products that could be removed. It's like, you know, one of these services that you pick up the bad stuff and take it away, and it gets dealt with separately. Less complications, etc. And obviously in hospitals and I guess really for all of the people who are surrounding it, you want that waste or dangerous product to be taken away. So in some circumstances, you might recycle the water and do all of those things in situ. Others, you might take it away depending on size and where it's placed. Yep.
Great question.
Brittany, you just wanted to show off your air conditioner in the back now to rub it in our face.
I thought you were
worst setup in this room.
That was nasty.
I thought you said you might have said you had a bung knee, but I thought you were saying that you were eating a banh mi.
I wish I was.
Great question, Brittany. Look, at this is the time. Probably got one more question from the audience, but they're all coming through now, so we might have to take some of it offline, but there was a point made in the chat around the education, the broader education piece around the cause of the problem. And I think, yeah, it's a responsibility for all. And I get Jack's point as well, as a founder, you can't be everything to everybody. Definitely, especially when you're starting off.
Yep.
When you get to the Canvas of the world, they can start throwing, you know, all these nice profits into the education of the cause of whatever problem. But let's just get started. Maybe one more question before we start wrapping things up. You just put your hand up, or
just wanted to make the point about holding local councils accountable. And I think, again, it's that education piece that people live in so-called desirable areas in Perth, in suburbs, but we don't know what the air quality is in our areas. Like where I live, we've got Roe Highway one side, we've got Canal the other side, but yet we're a really desirable family area. And I think if people were aware of actually how the air quality in our area rated to other areas, that could be a consideration, and then that could force councils maybe to invest in what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's why that central device that we put under no obligation and no costs in various locations can be a really interesting conversation starter, because it can make people aware of how bad the pollution are, or it could just confirm that the pollution is absolutely fine. So, but if you don't know, you won't know that you have a demand until you actually know that you have a demand. So, and until you know there's a problem, let's say.
Yeah. Hey, look, everybody, it's gone 10:31. I'm conscious of making sure everyone gets back to their day on time. I might wrap it up. James has put a question in there. James, maybe we might take that offline with Francois and Steve about how much equity, Francois, you're willing to give up.
Oh, that's
okay. So it's not a quick question. So I thought we'd just take it offline. But I'm sure you got that. Yep. So we might just round it out. Can I get everyone to unmute? And if you can, get your videos on and do a round of applause for both our founders for presenting today.
Well done, founders.
Well said. And thank you very much for all making time to our audience as well. Great questions as always. Thank you for supporting Murdoch Launchpad and our Startup Morning. We're doing this again next semester. But like I said, if you want to connect with any of the founders, Mel and Jen, please reach out to them and they'll be able to connect you. But thank you very much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday and we'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, everyone.